Alright, so what are we talking about today is Frankenstein, a work of science fiction. What can you expect about this discussion is topics about the author, the framework, why it's important of this novel, the muse behind the story, like why was it created, what was the purpose. We're also going to discuss the genre of the novel, we're going to discuss characters, we're going to discuss the true meaning of a monster, like why is he this way, what does it mean to be a monster. Then we're going to talk about the myths and how they tie into social media and portray this image of the monster that's really not true. So to whom do we owe credit, right? Mary Shelley. She had this great life of love and loss. Her stepmother decided Mary didn't need an education, but she loved to read and write, so she didn't let this stop her, okay? She then ran off to London with her father's very married pupil, Percy Shelley. Her father then alienated her, like many fathers would do. While traveling to Europe and broke, she lost her first child. Also, her half-sister died, and Percy's wife committed suicide in the same year. So not a very uplifting life, but in 1816 they were married. And then when Frankenstein was published in 1818, it was published by an anonymous author. So she didn't want its status to be affected by the fact that it was written by a woman. Many thought it was actually Mary's husband who wrote it because he penned the introduction. And it was a huge success, so they moved to Italy. Her marriage was filled with adultery and death of two more children. But then in 1822, her husband drowned, and she was a widow when she was 24, so super young. In the later years, she worked hard to support her and her son, and she worked even harder to publish her dead husband's poems, so he would always be remembered. Even though he cheated on her, she thought his work was amazing. She died of brain cancer in 1851 when she was 53, and she was put down next to her father and mother, and later, creepily, the cremated remains of her husband's heart. But her monster has survived throughout the ages in the hearts of many, even though she's gone, right? So we still remember Frankenstein even though she's not here. So this mastermind, Mary Shelley, she began the novel at the age of 18, and she started it because there was a supernatural writing contest, and many of the famous writers challenged her, and so she decided to take it on. And this novel was printed in 1818. It was first published in London. So why is the framework important, right? So the novel begins with Walton's letters to his sister and Walton's journal. Okay? So why is this important? Like, why do we even care? So this allows a deeper insight to his personal feelings, okay? We get to look behind the curtain. Who is this man? What's he doing with his life? Like, we get to see who he is when no one's looking. It's more personal. However, the framework shifts, right? Now the story of Victor Frankenstein is told by Victor. And then the story shifts to the story of the monster from the inner workings of the monster, right? That's how it's told. But then lastly, it shifts back to Walton and his letter. So what does this all provide, right? We have all these different perspectives, and it gives us different views of the stories. We're not stuck with one biased view. It allows us to see all the different characters in different lights. However, it also allows us to feel pity towards the monster throughout these accounts, okay? We start to relate to him and feel sorry. So what is science fiction, right? That's what this novel is categorized as. It's one of the first science fiction novels. So it's an explicit attempt to render the fictional world by reference to known or imagined scientific principles, or to advance in technology, or to a drastic change in the organization of society, right? So it's shifting the boundaries of our world. And Shelley uses a scientific experiment of a supernatural monster. So she experimented with this. She made the first great science fiction novel. So what does this mean, right? What factors of the scientific fiction do we use in her novel, okay? So one, it shows that knowledge has gone terribly, terribly wrong, okay? And then it shows a power trip that does not end well. When we see someone rise from man to God status, it normally doesn't end well, and they fall very fast and very hard. Lastly, the technical advances that do not exist in our world. We can't bring the dead back to life. That's pretty impossible. So it's showing things that couldn't happen, making them very real in the society that did exist. So who are our characters, right? We have Victor Frankenstein, the creator, the protagonist. We also have the monster. He started off as an innocent creature and turned into raging. And lastly, there's Robert Walton, the journeyman who discovers the monster. So we have these three set of main characters. I also included a character map. I wasn't sure if you guys were struggling with how to understand the novel or how it all ties in. So if you were, you can reference this, go back to it, help you out. So who's the real monster, right? We have Victor Frankenstein. He chooses isolation despite the pain he causes those close to him. He also sees himself as a monster. He's a hypocrite and he makes decisions that hurt the monster. However, the monster actually appears as a monster, and he craves a companion even though Victor Frankenstein constantly turns him down and he wants to be accepted. Lastly, he murders an innocent child at the shift of society's rejection. Now let's look at society. Maybe society is the real cause of our problems, right? Maybe they created the monster. So it is society who views the monster as a monster. They first reference him. Their repeated rejection causes him to embrace their stereotype, right? You constantly hear something, you're going to believe it after a while. Due to society expecting him to become a monster, he inescapably does. And lastly, the monster is a victim of a self-fulfilling prophecy. He's stuck in a loop. There's no chance for him to escape. So if we were to really think about it, who's the real monster in this novel? 10% would probably say the monster is actually the monster, right? 20% of us would say Dr. Frankenstein. He made him. He probably shaped him. He doesn't let him have any friends. But lastly, if we look at society, they're the true monster, right? So let's think about this for an activity. One of the tragedies of Frankenstein is the refusal of other characters in the novel to recognize the monster as a full human being. Brainstorm a list of the qualities that make us human. While you're doing this, you're going to make a list. You're going to bring it to class tomorrow. But on that list, you're going to decide which of these qualities does the monster have and which ones does he lack. And we're going to have a group discussion tomorrow. We'll break it down. But if you could have about 5 on each side, that'd be wonderful. So let's look at some wrong ideas or myths society has about Frankenstein, the novel. The monster has the name Frankenstein, which is very, very wrong. He is green. He's not. He's yellow and a paling gray color. He has bolts sticking out of his neck. Another myth. He is dead at the conclusion of the book. Is that truly confirmed? Do we really know that? Or does he escape? And lastly, he lacks intelligence. He's actually a very smart creature. So society has put these views into place because they haven't read the novel or truly understand, and media has actually run off with it, right? So the media has run away with this fake Frankenstein. In this Twix commercial, you'll see it. The stereotypical Frankenstein.
Can I have one? If you have 2 of something, you should share one. You have 2. Share one. Share one. Share one.
2 for me. None for you.
Alright, so we have that, right? So they're embracing the stereotypical monster. And then we have movies. I, Frankenstein, for example, which just came out. It's Aaron Eckhart, and he plays a monster named Adam. And it focuses a lot on him being soulless. There's demons and angels. It's a lot more biblical. And it also got a 3% on Rotten Tomatoes, so it's really not worth it. Then there's the original Frankenstein, which got an 8 out of 10, was made in 1931. So it was the first, actually, one of the better horror movies of the time. And then there's Young Frankenstein, which turned this whole story into a comedy. You see the Igor, the hunchback, come into play. And he inherits Frankenstein's castle and his experiments. This is his grandson. In the comic books, you also see the stereotypical monster as well as Halloween costumes. We don't see the yellow and gray pasty creature. We see a green monster with bolts in his neck and perfect black hair. So which one do you think is scarier? I personally think it's this dude. So lastly, for your quick homework assignment, write a 1-page double-spaced, 1-inch marker in response to the following prompt. Is the ending inevitable? Does the monster and Victor have to be destroyed in order for there to be order restored among men? If you could bring that in tomorrow along with your list of separated categories for the qualities of humans, that'd be wonderful. Have a great day.